Hello. I have a bit of a treat today because I've got Vithun here. Now, Vithun was in the next series of the Circle after me, and we got to know each other through that process. You were so much more theatrical, I think, than I was in the
Do you
Circle.
think no, I think you were like hello everyone as well. No, I think you're like a Hall of Fame character on the show. Like I feel like you were so influential. My parents think sometimes my mum asks me like, "Oh, was he on the same series as you?" Like you made such an impact that sometimes she gets confused and thinks that you were actually on our series as well.
I felt that I was on your series. I got to know so many people
Yeah, I think so,
on
yeah.
your series. And I remember talking to you all. So one after the other, it was extraordinary. I felt like the sort of wise old man, not the wise old man of the sea. I did feel like an older statesman.
Mm.
But it was really nice to meet and a very interesting experience. But now we're going to talk about Italy and about leaving the UK and working abroad. And with all the sort of Brexit situation as well, I think you've probably got quite a lot. I should point out to the people who are watching that we haven't rehearsed this, so I have no idea what you're going to say,
Yeah, this is
Vithan.
this is very
Um,
impromptu. Yeah. No, but thanks because I actually thought like as you said, there's probably lots of things to cover, but because I know you're really good at this interviewing thing, I was like, Tim, will be like the best person to get the right answers and
I
ask the right questions out of me.
Well, I hope
Um,
I hope so. I hope so. You never know. Anyway. Look, Vithan, the first question, and I'm just going to let you go on this one, is why did you leave the UK?
so it's weird because lots of people think, I guess for most people they thought it was, oh, I'm going to Italy, but it was more, as you said, leaving the UK, and it just so happened to be Italy. Um, but for me, leaving the UK, I was in a position where just I needed to find a new place to. I just wanted to move place. From my current job just wasn't the right one for me. And so then I was looking, and I just felt that, I mean, it wasn't even a feeling, it was a fact. Within the UK, and I was teaching in the UK as well. So shortly, people that knew me from the circle, I was an accountant, but shortly after that, the reason why I actually did the circle was because that job was coming towards an end anyway. And so shortly after that, I did one more accountancy job for like about 6 months, and then I actually switched to teaching. But yeah, so I was at a school that it wasn't the right fit for me. So I then was looking for a new one, and I was in the independent sector, and I'd done both state and independent, and I
Hmm.
felt that independent suited me more. So I wanted to stay in the independent, and obviously since the Labour thing where they got rid of they added VAT onto the
Were, were you
fees and
you you
stuff.
were in a school when that happened, weren't you?
Yes, yeah, I was in an independent school when that happened. Yeah.
So did you feel that effect?
Definitely, yeah. The afterwards the and actually even before the policy came like into effect, just as soon as Labour got the big majority, like literally the day it was almost instant. We could see the cost cutting taking place, and I wouldn't say that's a thing against my individual schoolwork because from what I hear, that was happening industry
Yeah.
wide. But all costs were being cut. And even like, for example, my school didn't take away free lunches for staff, but I knew other schools took away free lunches for staff and everything. So they were cutting costs any way they could. And when staff in all schools, they were asking staff for like voluntary redundancies. And if staff did choose to just leave on their own accord, they just tended not to replace them, mainly because student numbers were just falling as well. Because
Hmm.
I've seen even now very like back when I was a pupil, very selective oversubscribed schools are now advertising on Instagram going like, contact us. We still have places in all year groups. Whereas 15 years ago, those schools would have been maybe like seven applicants to one place.
Yeah.
And now they're publishing on their Instagram stories that they can contact them for the spaces like outside of the examination cycle. However, I would say this trend was happening anyway because I felt that the increase in fees was exceeding the increase in inflation. And I felt that this is because I have a few theories about this. I feel that because private schools were kind of asked, or like universities were pressured not to admit so many private school
Hmm.
students, and universities did follow that. What happened was private schools lost their advantage, and they used to kind of be more really academic and getting you into Oxbridge, sort of, or the top Russell Group universities. And because that stopped, they had to rebrand. And so what private schools rebranded as was more communities for the elite. That's how I see them now. It's more like rather than them being for the academic, they're more communities for the elite. And because the state sector is also having to under strain, the state sector can't offer much extracurricular. So that's basic. So instead of private schools offering superior education, they now offer like a wider range of activities. So
Hmm.
the general marketing is on all the kind of drama, music, sport facilities that private schools can offer that a state school wouldn't offer because the state school would be stuck in there solely on their curriculum. Um, so that's how the private schools have branded. But I guess for most parents, especially in the UK, I feel that the private schools in London, for example, are generally by the main community now. It's mainly people of color, especially the South Asian community, are the ones subscribing to the private schools because they tend to be people that are really into their education. And I think for them, the extracurricular isn't so much of a big pull
Yep.
factor as the university admissions were, so that this rebranding hasn't really worked on them. And so,
I can I interrupt there for 1 minute because
yeah,
what I find has happened in the last 10 years is there's also been an explosion in private tuition,
yeah, yeah,
particularly within the Asian community. And so students are going to schools and then coming back and working their backside off. And you think, why are they doing this? Because if they aren't getting that sort of superior teaching at school, and it's clear they're not. In subjects I teach, for example, I'm horrified by the gaps. And you teach the sort of the queen of the subjects. You teach mathematics. I should point this out. You do teach mathematics, don't you?
yes, 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 that's
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I'd like to point out. I'd like to just raise my hand here because in my day when I was little, there was always a contrast or competition that was made between the arts, which I teach, and the sciences, which you teach, and particularly between maths, which was considered a sort of slightly dull subject, and English, which was considered a slightly sort of heightened subject. And I realized a long time ago that English and maths do exactly the same thing. That maths is about identifying something with precision, and English is exactly the same. And what I don't understand is where this competition came along and why people don't realize that they're actually the same sort of academic process. And we should have more children crossing crossing that divide between English and maths because it sort of produces a much more rounded individual.
Yeah,
I can't remember whether
definitely,
I was going
yeah.
to say anything else
Um,
there.
No,
Yeah.
no, 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 that's true actually. Yeah. But anyway, yes. So I think the trend in the private schools was decreasing anyway. But to be honest, the VAT wasn't the reason why it was a minor factor, but it wasn't the main reason I was looking elsewhere. It was more just the school. Because if anything, I was looking for other private schools. So it wasn't like I know a lot of people are moving into the state, going back to the state sector or trying to, but I was still
Hmm.
wanting to stay in the private sector, regardless of all these issues. What I noticed was I felt that the private school, when people claim like, oh, there's always jobs for teachers, I think that's in the state sector. I actually feel in the private sector, it's very competitive to actually get a teaching job in the private sector. Because even when I got the one I had, um, teachers in my state school had said to me like, oh, it's very rare for you to get this. People wait 15 years to try and get into a private school kind of
And
thing.
are you able to teach do you teach through the whole thing? You do A level as well as
Yes,
GCSE?
yeah, an A level, yeah, up to A level, yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah.
Wonderful. I think if you've got that A level option, it makes some of the plod of GCSE and pre-GCSE so worthwhile. And then you realize actually there's a lot to be done in that. I think I spend more of my time now doing pre-GCSE stuff, and I really enjoy it because there's so much sort of base work that needs to be set in, and it's not done efficiently.
Mhm.
And I'm sure it's also true in mathematics.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
I wish I'd had a better grounding in mathematics when I was little, because that's when you need it.
Yeah, no,
And
because I
without
think
that,
like
you know,
things like bid maths and stuff are actually some is sometimes it's intentionally taught wrong in primary for like just ease, and then they come into secondary with all these mistakes. Because I don't think it's like I think the teachers are actually intentionally teaching it to them wrong, or it's as a more like simplified version. So they'll literally
mm.
go, every letter is its own category, which in actual practice isn't the case. So yeah, there's little things like that that you
And
notice in
now, and
secondary that you.
have you had the pleasure of doing step classes
Oh no, no, no,
for
I'm not. I
Cambridge?
wouldn't say I'm mathsy enough for that. Yeah, and
That is the one. So very much when I'm talking to students who are choosing their A levels and they say, "Oh, I want to do maths," and I think, "Oh, that's great. Are you going to do further maths?" And if they say no, I think you're not a mathematician.
yeah,
You're not going to take this any further.
yeah.
But
No, no, because
it's always a good guide.
I only did further maths to AS level. I didn't do it to full A level. Because yeah, as
Right.
you said, for me, like at school, I always felt like, and even now, I feel that I'm more of like from an academic perspective, I feel like I'm more of a jack of all trades rather than a master of anything. I feel like I'm just, and actually, that's one of the hardest things I found about teaching is that I've noticed most people tend to be real specialists in their subjects, whereas I feel that I'm not like supreme at any individual subject. I could probably do all the subjects to a decent enough level, but I'm never going to be the strongest in a department at any subject. And I think that's one of the limitations I found in my career thus far. But anyway, I think that leads on to why I probably was finding it hard to teach at some of these top private schools that I was like, because I was applying for the most like prestigious ones, the ones that everyone has heard
Very
about,
good.
because that was realistically the next step in my career from the one I was at. And I just wasn't making any progress. So then I thought, oh, fine, let me try back in the state sector. And even then, no one was hiring me because I'd become too expensive from being in the private sector. And obviously, I wasn't willing to take the pay
Yeah.
cut because people at my previous school,
And the pay cut is astonishing. I remember going into the state sector as a head of department, and I was just thinking, this is astonishing. I have to do more work privately simply to make up enough so I can pay all
mm,
my
yeah.
expenses. And
And
it's just
things
think,
like even and if there's loads of add-ons because I know that I mentioned that some private schools were taking away the free lunch, but um, some like when I worked in a state school, you had to pay um more for your lunch than the students. So it wasn't even that you just had to pay for your lunch. You actually had to pay more just for being older. Like so and that just that and you don't realize how much the cost adds up, or at least how much the cost you save
yeah,
from having lunch provided for you. Yeah, so I was stuck. I wasn't able to get the state sector either because I noticed the trend of state schools is they're generally only going after, I mean, private schools are now doing the same because of the cost pressures, but if you are like have more than a year experience, you become too expensive because there's enough trainees. I don't think the
yeah.
issue with the numbers isn't so much of the uh, getting people to start getting into the profession. I think that there is still smaller than they'd like, but I actually think the bigger issue is more the retention. So um,
Oh yeah.
it's the fact people do it and then they quit after a few years rather than the fact of getting people in.
And
So
I found in the end that the staff rooms were horrific.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and I discovered in the end, wherever there was bullying in the playground, it could always be identified in the staff room.
Mhm. Yeah, no, no. I mean, to be honest, like even though I actually thought one of the strengths of my last school was the staff, and
Oh,
like the fact I keep in touch with so many of them still, for
good.
me shows that those stuff, and even like in my previous schools as well. There's still staff that I've kept in touch with. So yeah, in that regard, staff for me have generally always maybe I get on with people easily, but I don't know, but no, no, but I've not had issues with. Um, Staff as such. But yeah, so I was stuck and I wasn't finding any jobs. And so I used to be someone that was always like dead set on like I'm never leaving London. Even for university, I studied at a London university. And that
Hmm.
was for me, that was lots of people that was a turn off like to they want to change city for uni. But like for me, it was more of a like, no, I like London, I want to stay in London. And but I noticed as like the last few years, I was starting to like London less. Um, I don't know so much. Maybe it was cost of living. For me, I think it was more safety rather than cost of living. And actually, I think it was more in my last school. I think for me, the thing that I found hardest was the culture of the pupils. And I feel that I know it's a very small sample size of the whole population, but it really made me feel as if that was the future of the country, I need to get out. That was kind of how I was feeling. There was a big distaste for the country. Like I feel like when you are teaching people that really you feel that they hate the UK and they don't support anything like that Britain represents us in terms of like tolerance, respect for others and stuff. It just puts me off. And actually coming here, which I'll get onto, like you notice that it's actually restored my faith in humanity,
It
because
it's
it's
proper.
taught me
It's probably
like
yeah. It's probably restored your faith in Britain as well, hasn't it?
um I don't know actually, because like it's made me. But the thing is, that now that I'm here, I feel like I could never go back to teaching in the UK, and that's a lot of my colleagues in Italy. They say the same thing. Even when we have
Yeah.
a hard day and we're stressed and stuff, and then we talk about it, and no one, if we were offered the like, people might moan about their job now, but no one would ever go back to the UK if they were given the chance. For teaching, I mean, to live, that depends, but like to work in a UK school, I don't think I would ever go back as well. I would just choose an office job. But anyway, so then because I was unable to find a job, usually in the past I would have just actually just been unemployed and searched. But I think the fact that I wasn't liking the UK was why I actually considered let me look abroad. So then I just started looking abroad, and this school that I'm at satisfied everything I needed, because when I was looking for the private schools in the UK, the reason why I was looking at the boarding schools was because they start at year 9 rather than year 7, which is
Yeah.
what the state
Yeah.
schools
Yeah.
start at. And so the school I found is even better. It starts at year 10. So it's just year 10 to year 13. And so for me, I found the behavior of some of the younger pupils the most challenging. And so that problem was just eradicated. Um, and I think that's probably why I couldn't go back to a UK state school, because you have to have that, unless it's a sixth form college that I know many people have gone into because they found it more peaceful for them as well. But yeah, I don't think I could go into the whole year 7 to year 13 thing again. Yeah.
Yes.
So then
The
I was looking
behavior
at
can be
different
a problem.
countries.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
was looking at different countries, and so ultimately, it wasn't really so much that it was Italy; it was more that it was the school. Ironically, people, it's funny. Some of my colleagues joke about this now. I always had a big bias against Italy as a country.
Really?
Yeah, because I always feel that Italy is like they get so much undeserved privilege, in my opinion, by society. I feel society puts them on a pedestal, um, and just like if you're Italian, it's instant aura. If you notice in
Yes.
the yeah, and I don't like this, and I feel like they've not. It's just like the way I describe it, or I can explain it, is if you just think of any noun, if you put the word Italian in front of it,
It's
it will automatically come with some prestige, and people will think higher of it.
absolutely.
Whereas if you put like, for example, Indian or any South Asian country, there's an automatic negative step. Like in people's first impressions, it's quite negative. Like
I
if you
see.
and there's little things like even the Winter Olympics that just happened. I think like in the first hockey match or something, there was a power outage after 4 minutes, and then I saw a tweet on my feed going, "Oh God, I love Italy," like about the disorganization. But I guarantee if that was a different country that had that, even if it was the UK that had that, people would have complained, going like, "Oh, the UK can't get anything right. We're such a failed country." But like because it was Italy, it was like, "Oh, we love Italy. Italy's so funny." Like that, and the branding of their disorganization was totally positive. So
Yes.
I always see myself as a moderator. So when I feel that people are being overliked, I tend to hate on them more. Or and when I feel people are being hated on and too much more than they deserve, I tend to like them to like feel what I to get them to the level that I think is justice. So I've always felt that Italy was overliked as a nation and as people, and so I always felt like I had to like because I noticed subconsciously even when I was watching like in the World Cup or any sport or anything, I'd always intentionally support against the Italians like subconsciously. Um, and I realized the reason why I'm doing that is because I noticed people are liking them purely for being Italian. Um, because in the UK, if anyone has even an ounce of Italian heritage, they claim it because they know it's a positive. And
Yes.
this is evidenced by even people that know me know that I'm really into Eurovision. You see that in Eurovision, even when even in the lead up, when people think that the like Italian entry isn't that like when the pundits beforehand say like, oh, the Italian entry isn't that strong this year. In the end, it doesn't matter because the general public will just vote for any product in Italian, and it always get. And it's funny because population-wise, Italy is actually one of the countries that cares for Eurovision the least amongst its people because they have Sanremo, which is the Sanremo Music Festival is even older than the Eurovision Music Festival. But if you actually look at what the public vote for, Italy is the country that consistently gets top five finishes. Like for them to finish out of the top five is seen as a bad thing because it's so easy for them to finish in the top five.
But Vithun, now you're living there. You enjoy it, don't you?
Yeah, actually, for me being here, it's changed my perception. I think it's made it more like if at first it started off like if you can't beat them, join them. To like so if you can't because if you can't if I can't stop them from having this privilege, take just have some for myself. And to be honest, like it worked because as soon as my colleagues in UK knew that I was coming to Italy, I noticed my aura like rose way higher than
Yes,
it would
yes.
have. Yeah, like had because and it's people don't realize that like the difference between even like but it's beyond Italian privilege is beyond European like just general European privilege. Because had I gone said moved to Spain, which was actually one of my other options that I was considering, or Portugal, I don't think the amount of people that don't really speak to me coming up to me asking me about it would have been as much. But suddenly
No.
everyone was coming up to me asking me about Italy because I just think out of all the countries in the like to be honest, if someone asked me the question like if I could choose to have any nationality, I would 100% choose Italian. I might not choose to be like to live in Italy or like be raised in Italy for reasons that I'll get onto. But if I could just choose to have a nationality, I think Italian without a doubt. As a male, I think females is a bit different, but I think as men, I don't think there's anything more easier or like any
And
better
it
privilege that you can get than being an Italian male.
and now you're speaking Italian. Don't you find Italians open up and they're much more effusive than than we in Britain might be?
Perhaps, but like one of the things I noticed actually, I know we were going to talk about like culture shocks and stuff as well. For me, I feel there's a lot more because I'm in the north as well, which I feel is not as pure Italian as the south. So
Yes,
in Milan, like I guess,
I
yes,
lived in Naples,
yeah, which is
which
more in the
is
south, yeah.
very Italian,
Yeah. Whereas I
and
feel,
they've got a different language.
yeah,
The
exactly, yeah.
apology
Whereas
is
I feel like
quite hard.
in
Mm.
Milano, I feel that they talk about how Italians are more expressive more than they actually are expressive. And that makes sense. There's more talking about how Italians are so expressive more than them actually being expressive.
Yes.
And so I haven't felt that much difference. I think for me, why the move has felt so seamless in a way is because I would say it's the most UK like or London like city within Italy, I would say. Milan is the most UK like city or London like city, I would
I
say.
yes, right.
And so I feel like for
I
me, it's
don't know
been,
Milano very well, so
yeah, I feel
I
like in
can't
that
really
because it's the
speak.
financial capital and stuff as well, I feel like it's been quite seamless for me. But yeah, I think now that because it's like this was the country that hired me when no one else did, I feel now I've got this like now it's gone from being the country I always hated on and was envious of to now basically the country I will support if I'm not supporting England. Like it's like totally changed how I
And
perceive
it's
perceive it now.
you feel at home there.
Yeah, yeah, actually that it feels like for me it's really like I still find it fun to try and pass as a local and like for me the aim is in any conversation I always try and see like I find it still so exciting to go to the supermarket and seeing like if they will have to switch to English because that's if they switch to English for me that's like the way you've lost the game because it's like they worked out you weren't a local. But generally I'm
Yes.
getting away with them not switching. So I mean it could just be because they don't speak English, which actually is one of the things I wanted to get on, which surprised me as well. But yeah, so that's kind of basically how I ended up in or why I left the UK. And just for the difficulty of finding a job. Um, that naturally progressed with my career. And I mean, judging from the stuff I'm reading, it seems like it's in all industries. Like I saw there's only like 10,000 graduate job. I think
Hmm.
Bloomberg like reported like 10,000 graduate jobs, even though there's like 900,000 graduates
Well,
a year.
if you train as a doctor, it's very difficult to get a job in the NHS, although they're screaming out for doctors because
Yeah.
they don't want to invest in training you further.
Yeah, so I just think in
Um,
any job right now, it's impossible. And so I saw some like when I saw people commenting, they were like, "Yeah, you know that job you hate, um, don't quit it because of just how difficult it is to find um a job even for people that don't like their jobs they're staying because they know how hard, like
yeah.
impossible it is to find jobs now because nobody wants to hire everyone is all organizations and all industries are cutting corners although what's interesting is that in Italy youth unemployment is I know in the UK I've been reading about how it's been increasing but it's nothing on the youth unemployment in Italy which is way higher than um
Really?
yeah, it's like 20% something like
Oh my
crazy.
goodness.
Yeah. But I think me being here, one thing I noticed is I feel that every country, it's not so much that the UK was bad or anything. I just feel that it seems that every country treats their their own people worse than foreign people. I feel that because they know that the people in the within their land have less freedom and can't kind of it's harder for them to move. They don't have to treat them as well. Whereas to get like people and investment and skilled work, they have to give them better like deals and better privileges. And so I feel that every country now treats their foreigners better than they treat their own.
They're
That's one thing I've
foreign
gathered
work.
because
They're foreign
yeah, for I
workers.
guess foreign workers, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But even I mean,
And of
yeah.
course, you've chosen to be there. So and that gives you a brownie point, doesn't it, really? It's sort of
Yeah, I guess so. But I
they would
mean,
like that.
but I mean, judging by the immigration process, it doesn't make it seem like
Oh, tell
they.
me about the immigration. Look,
Yeah.
we have to speak about how difficult is it to find accommodation there first, and then let's go on
Um,
about
I mean, to be
immigration.
honest, with the accommodation, if it wasn't for the agency that like my school had set me up with, I don't know what I would have done because it would have been really hard. But generally, it wasn't. I don't think it was too difficult. Like I would say because maybe because of the agency helping me, but what I would say is you need to research things beforehand because the way the way I could describe it is that for me this was a totally new thing as well because in London I'd always lived at home. I'd never rented. The only renting
Hmm.
I closest thing to renting was living in student halls for university because I actually stayed in student halls my entire time because I was in at my university it was called a peer supporter, essentially like a student counselor,
Oh
but it
yes,
meant
yes.
one of the privileges of this was that you got to live in halls all of throughout your time on the degree. So I never really done the whole proper renting thing. So I don't know if it's the same in uh the UK, but the way I could describe it is that I guess for a uh like for me if I because I'm from London a tourist might not want to stay in areas that are dodgy compared to what I can like for me because I'm like London hardened in that sense. I wouldn't be as afraid in a an area that isn't as prestigious in London as someone new to the city would be. And so likewise, I've done a lot of research on areas of Milano that weren't particularly safe, whereas the agency were kept suggesting these areas because they were very affordable. And so, but because, and not because they intentionally were doing a bad service, but obviously for a local person born and brought up in Milano, that area wasn't seen as too dangerous. But for someone new to the city that needs to like learn how everything works there, obviously I want to go to somewhere safe. So what I did also, the best website to use is called Idealista. That's basic. There are a few others, but that one I think is the most user friendly in terms of the interface as well. And it's also the best one if you, it's got properties for Italy, Spain, and Portugal. Those are the three
I see.
markets they have. But for it's known as the best, the one most people use. So yeah, that's where it's on that website. They had split um, the city into kind of 18, I believe 18 neighborhoods as such. So all I did was I basically put them through ChatGPT and I told me to
Oh,
order
yes.
them from most safe to least safe. And so then what I did was I took the top third, so the top six neighborhoods, and only looked at properties within those ones because I thought even within those kind of bigger um, districts as such, the roughest neighborhood in like the top six districts won't be that bad. So that's why I thought it was a safe bet to just take the top third. And so that's kind of how I did my
And you're close enough to be able to commute backwards and forwards
yes,
to
yeah,
work.
yeah. I think the one thing I would say is if you coming here, my main advice would be to make sure you live near a metro station. I think if you choose to, some people live near in areas where, and sometimes often fairly central areas that aren't that close to metro stations, and it makes commuting a lot harder.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I feel like buses and trams aren't nowhere near as reliable as the metro is amazing here, in my opinion. Because I think the London Tube is generally, I mean, it's okay. And I mean, compared to the rest of the transport infrastructure in the UK, I would say it's pretty good, to be honest. But compared to London, the Milan metro is so
Yeah.
superior. I think also just because it's a smaller city, because I noticed the same thing when I went on holiday to Lisbon or like Budapest and some of these other cities. Because the city is smaller, it's easier to kind of keep it organized.
Hmm.
But I know the um, Milan Metro, whoever the company, they've been used to for some trains like Germany as well. So I think it's seen as quite a um, like a business standard bearer for like the transport
Yes.
infrastructure. So yeah, the metro is really good. So I would say if you live near a metro station, you're generally always going to be fine. Just make sure you don't live on the very ends of them because on some of the ends, there's an additional tariff. So like the annual pass won't work. Which is sometimes if you have, which often, for example, when we had sports day, we were on one of these ends of the line, and so your pass didn't work. So you had to either use your credit card because if you used your pass, once you get to that station, it wouldn't work, and you'd be stuck at the barrier, and you'd have to like climb over the barrier because you
Oh,
wouldn't be
my
able to get
goodness.
through. So yeah, so I don't know why people choose. I don't actually know the advantage of um, living maybe unless the apartments are way cheaper like two stops like out like that. Maybe that probably must be the reason how you can justify the tariff. Because for like an individual journey, um, it's I think €2.20 for an individual journey, but it would add like another probably €150 for that tariff for
Hmm.
just one or two extra stops. But actually, one of the things I was going with the reason why living near a metro station is good is because um, the annual pass is only €330 for the year, which if you compare to London
Oh, it's
transport is,
astonishing.
yeah.
Astonishing.
And that's for unlimited metro, tram, and bus within the city.
Right.
Um, so it's very good actually. So that's why I think it's good to live near a metro station because you get it all organized. And actually the newest line because they have five lines. Um, Ironically, the newest line is the M4 and not the M5 because um, the reason why is because M4 was given planning permission prior to M5, but it just took
Uh-huh.
so long for them to build. So the newest actual line to use has been the M4, even though it was given planning permission for the M5. But the M4 train is driverless. So so when there was strikes and stuff, it was still
It's
running
still
as normal.
functioning. Ah, there
Yeah.
we are.
And the M4
Yeah.
takes you to one, not the main airport, because the main airport's a bit like um, most airports, they're not in the city proper. But the M4, which is the Blue Line, that takes the last stop on one end is Milano Linate Airport, which is, I guess, like Milano's equivalent of London City, like
Yes.
your kind of airport, fairly in like in the city airport, because it only does you can only fly to European destinations from there. But for me, like I always fly from there now because it goes straight to Heathrow, and I in the UK I live quite close to Heathrow, so uh, it suits me perfectly to because I don't need any transfers between the airports really, because I can just use the metro once I get there. Whereas from the main um, Milano Airport in Malpensa, you have to take a train called the Malpensa Express, which is about, it's not too bad. It's only, I think it costs about 13 euros, 1-3 each way.
Mm.
And it's about 50 minutes on the journey's about 50 minutes. But sometimes I had a horror experience when I traveled to Berlin on like a work trip actually. And then on the way back, that there was about like 2 hours of delays on and we were just stuck on the train for like an hour. And then I had to switch like
I
so
understand
many
all
times
that
during it.
misery.
So yeah, so I feel that the outside of the metro, you do get some disorganization, which is why when I said for finding accommodation, the other thing I think I feel like people have more rights in um, Milano with in terms of the renting. Generally, most agreements are known as 4+4 contracts, which essentially means that the landlord can't raise the fee for 8 years.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah, and so and they have to give you um six typically I think for the expats the agency I think negotiated the notice periods down to 3 months. But a typical contract for like an Italian citizen would be these 4+4 contracts and then 6 months notice. So I think
On
that's
either side.
yeah, so that's the difference, yeah. So I guess for the I guess the disadvantage from the renters side is the fact that yes, they don't get the price rises, but they have to plan
And
way
did
ahead.
did you get the right apartment first time round, or is it?
Well, yeah, so my agency they offered me 6 viewings, and out of the 6 viewings, there was only one that I really liked, and that's the one I chose. And luckily, because I think things move off the market really quickly because we came in like 1 week in May last year to look for an apartment. And so I must have arrived the Monday night with a schedule of these 6 venues. I actually, the six that out of those six that were on the original itinerary, I only saw four of them and two were replacement ones because within that, within the space of those 2 days, two had been taken
Mhm.
off the market by renters. Even the one that I am now renting at the time of my visit, an Italian couple had already put in an offer, but they put in an under offer. So because I matched the asking rate, that's why they offered it to me. But yeah, I think for me the key things I would say rent when you're renting in Italy is make sure you're or things that I didn't because some people they did their viewings virtually, but I was like, no, I need to go in person to see this because
Yeah.
virtually people always take photos from like even in hotels, like often with hotels or swimming pools, they'll take photos at an angle that makes the pool look big, and then when you get there,
Enormous,
it's
yes.
like
But
yeah.
do you have things like beds and lights and sort of functioning utilities in your flat?
Yes, yeah, actually, I think fortunately for me, the place I'm renting used to be um an Airbnb. Like the landlord
Ah,
used to
right.
have it as an Airbnb, so it's generally come fully equipped with most things that I didn't have to install many things. I think main things that I didn't care about before that when I've come here that and in person I realized I needed was one you need well you don't need it but like find a place with aircon because in the
Ah,
summer it gets
yes.
really hot
Oh,
and actually
madness, madness.
many places in because many of the buildings in Italy are quite old they don't have many of them don't have aircon. So I think it's a life
It's a
changer to have.
lifesaver.
Yeah.
I lived in Greece for a while, and I went through quite a few apartments, but without aircon, it's a nightmare.
Yeah. So
It's
yeah, so I think for me, like that's one of the things. The other thing, like coming in person, that I noticed I didn't like was one, these things. Oh, these properties are on like mezzanine floors. Are you
Oh,
familiar with
yes.
that?
Yes, yes, I
Yeah,
am.
because
Yes.
I don't know if that's just a universal thing, but you realize how small the ceiling is. It feels like
Yes.
even for like a short person like me, it still feels too cramped.
Yep.
So that was one of the things I noticed. Um, so I didn't like the mezzanine floor. I didn't like because that actually also the other downside of that is that it takes away the balcony, which is another thing that I think is really important. One thing I didn't think of so highly of a balcony because I know many of my colleagues they were like, "Oh, I need a place with a good balcony or terrace and stuff," and it wasn't one of my priorities. But
Well, because
now having
you'd been in the UK, we don't think about
yeah,
balconies there. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. So now finding somewhere like with and having the balcony, I realize how important that is so that when I find a new place, I would definitely yeah, balcony would be a must. And then I think the final thing for me, I don't think this is a universal belief, but I think I would definitely didn't like the properties on really high floors. Um, but I don't know if
Ah,
that's just because
yes.
of me not liking heights much, because some people like it for the view. But I don't know. I felt like the the balcony height is really short. Like I feel like it would be very easy for someone to push you over. So it just didn't it just didn't sit right with me. Like I was just
Yes.
like it was like if someone was annoyed at you, I just feel like they could easily like clothesline you over the
You
balcony.
you've got to remember,
Um,
I also lived in Moscow, and now I hear all these stories of people falling off balconies in Moscow. I think, oh my God, I'm so lucky.
yeah.
I hate
Yeah.
high apartments.
So I think that's the other thing. And because a lot of these places don't have because the lady from the agency that actually took us round, because she lived in an old building, she said she lived on the fourth floor without a lift. So a lot of these old buildings don't have
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
elevators. And so if you sometimes you're living on these high floors and having to take the stairs all the time. So
Yes.
that's the other thing because some of these buildings either have very old lifts, or they just don't have a elevator at all. Yeah, so those are the main observations. I guess there's I would say there are some hidden costs though because the rent price that they list is just the rent, but what you actually pay is the rent, and it's called condominium fees, and these fees
Ah,
kind of
yes.
cover most of the bills, to be fair, because outside of this, I only have to pay for the electricity, but all the heating and stuff is included in these condominium fees, and so is the concierge who cleans the communal areas and everything. That's all included.
And
So that
do you
adds
have a
on an extra.
person downstairs monitoring the door, or is that a thing
Um,
of the past?
No, not in this place. There are in some places they have one, but to be honest, I never really see my concierge because I'm always at work
Right.
in the morning, and then when I come back, they're not here. I think they probably only work and clean the communal areas in the mornings, so I never really see them, and because I don't think they are here on weekends, only on the weekdays. So yeah, so I never really see them much. But no, there's no one really guarding the door. I think there might be someone who helps with the like deliveries of parcels and things like that.
Oh, yes.
But he mainly just cleans the communal areas. But I think the other hidden cost is well, generally you have to do 3 months deposit, and then you also have to pay an agency fee. So the it is it's quite some people have managed to get out of it if you can liaise with the landlord directly, but often these landlords, because they don't speak, well, I mean, to be honest, most of the agents couldn't speak English either, but because the land I think because the landlords struggle to either they don't live in Milano anymore, they can't speak English. They have a agent who helps them show off the property. And so you have to pay an agency fee, and the agency fee is on average 15% of 1 year's rent, which is quite a lot, actually.
That's a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah, it's just a one-off fee you pay, but you have to without the condominium fee. So, but just the rent without those fees, you have to pay 15% of a year's rent as the agency sell-on fee, which I think was the one big like annoying cost. But then after having said that, I think for me anyway, like my agent has actually they're there. they're responsible for then anything that goes wrong in the apartment. And
Right.
mine has generally been quite helpful. Like, there is that concern that because you've paid them, there's no incentive for them to kind of help you anymore. But generally they've been like, it does take sometimes resending emails, but generally they've been fine. Um, and like helping me. And for me, to be fair, the agent was a big selling point in choosing the apartment because some of them I noticed like the language barrier was going to be too difficult to overcome, whereas this agent for me was the only one that spoke like fluent English. And I remember when we first met him and we like I think when I came with my dad asked him like, "Oh, do you speak English?" And he was like, "Yeah." He was like, and then he replied like, "A surprise isn't it?" Because that's actually one of the we'll get on to culture shocks, but that was one of the biggest shocks for me how little English was spoken. I really thought English was going to be spoken more in Italy for very I'll give like there were various reasons why. And I don't think they were delusional reasons, but I just thought there would have been more English speakers than there are.
Yeah.
Other people think that oh, you can live here without speaking a word of Italian at all, which I think is technically true if you live in, I think if you live in the very touristic areas, you might be able to get away with it. But I think it takes more than that. You need to live in the touristic areas and then also rely on bilingual friends to help you with all the admin.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
absolutely.
if you're going to do things more or less on your own, um, I think it's going to be very difficult to
And the
get by
and the
without.
ad the admin is a nightmare if you don't speak Italian, if
Yeah,
you don't speak the language.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah. So I think it
like
is
so
very
I
difficult.
I remember that particularly in Russia and in Greece, a little bit in Albania. I didn't really deal with much admin on my own in Italy, but in those days I had enough Italian to function. I'm trying to think of any. Germany was a nightmare.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Trying to deal with German bureaucracy with, 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 without feeling comfortable in German. My German was good enough, but I wasn't comfortable. But Greek was the biggest problem, and without living in Greece, I don't think I would have survived at all in Russia. Greece taught me how to negotiate difficult bureaucracy. So even if you spoke good Greek, and I thought I did, the fact that they knew that you were foreign meant that they were trying to pull one over on you,
Okay.
and that was so much worse in Russia. So I was warned, and I was forearmed. But what I remember in Italy was things were fairly straightforward. Um, was that your experience so you
No,
had to
I
go
think for
through
me,
immigration
because
and oh right,
yeah, no,
I'm
because people
sorry.
had people had warned me, like so yeah, so that was just the general thing about the property. But so the next step was then moving here, and actually the disorganization made me think at one point that they were going to withdraw my contract because of how difficult it was to get the visa. So there's quite like I've noticed a
How
lot of
how how
the
long did how long did it take you?
so, well, to be honest, I only just yesterday I went to collect my residence visa. So,
Right.
from the process of me getting being offered the job, it's basically been just over a year to finally collect the residence visa. But there's many steps, and actually the longest step is the first one. And I've heard there's been issues with international schools across the
Hmm.
country with this issue, especially because the problem they're having is they need to hire British or English native English speakers. And the reason why they can't, because I guess people say, oh, why can't they just hire people from other EU countries? And they can, but I was actually reading some of the reviews of other international schools, and often the comments of people complaining if they write a negative review is they complain saying that the staff all have an accent, like a Spanish accent or a other European
Yes.
accent, and they
Yes.
don't like it because they've sent their children there to develop a British or an American accent, so they don't want their child
Absolutely.
developing like an English accent where you can tell they're not an English speaker. They want to like because the ones actually a lot of the students I met at university that came from these international they sound very American because they've that I think that was the selling point of sending them to those schools. Um, so yeah, so I think that as a result, schools are forced to hire from the UK. But I think the problem has only seems to have started like this year because even though Brexit happened a while ago, it takes time for things to actually fall into place. And I think now is finally when it's kind of everything as a consequence of Brexit is finally like being put into place. And so now there's so many barriers to enter.
But
So the
the
first
whole
thing,
Brexit thing is a nightmare.
yeah. So
Absolute
like
nightmare.
the first thing you need is basically it's called a nulla osta. And so essentially, my understanding of this is that um, the admin people in Italy, the company has to justify to them that there's nobody in Italy they could have hired for
Ah,
that
yes.
role, and that's why they have to hire someone externally. And so you're generally told this process takes 3 months to come. So we submitted all the paperwork at the end of March, and so we thought that would come at the end of June, which would have been enough time because I had started at the end of August. And so it just didn't come. And so we got to August and it wasn't coming. And so luckily, my schools is owned by a British company that hires a lot of these international schools. And so they found a loophole, which was instead of hiring me by the school, they hired me by the parent company. So
All right.
I was hired by the UK, um, and for on a short-term contract doing a secondment in Italy. And that was the only way to get me there
And
on
when
time.
when did the document come through?
The document actually came through a couple of weeks after me
All
arriving
right.
here, but it didn't make sense to, well, I had to go back, but I'll explain that next step after. But so for the first half term, we used the 90-day tourist allowance.
Aye, horrible.
Yeah, so,
I've had problems with that as well.
yeah. So
So nasty.
we used that allowance, and I was technically just still a British employee, just doing a like a work placement in Italy. So that was the loophole we had around that. But I have no idea what we would have done if that parent company didn't ex if the parent company didn't exist and it was just a standalone
Yeah.
school. I think they might have just had to withdraw the
And then
because
how many have you had to take days off school simply to stand in a queue and do this nightmare bureaucracy stuff?
well, yeah. So after this document came back, what we did was in the half term. I had to fly back to London to have my appointment at the consulate to get my
Aye.
work visa. So
Yes.
because this Nulla Osta document is what's required to get the work visa, it's one of the on the list of required documents, it's one of the things. So then you apply to get the work visa, and that usually, but you can only return back to to Italy. I think it's like 16 days after your appointment. So I
That's
was then
right.
stuck in Italy, in the UK, back for like um 2.5 weeks. And so then, because my holiday, the half-term break was only 1 week, for 1.5 weeks I was teaching virtually. Um, and so I had to teach online. And this has been a big issue. So many of the schools, they're having their teachers go back to England for like a few months whilst their visa, if they run out of 90 days or to sort out their visa appointment and all this stuff, everyone's going, it's like buses that were just going back and forwards. And
Yes,
then
yes,
they
yes.
have to hire these like temporary people for the
Because
short term.
you then can't come back to Italy for another 3 months
Oh, no, no,
after
no,
your
you can
90
because
days.
once you have the work visa,
Oh yes, but
um,
if you didn't have that work visa, you would be stuck. You'd be stuck out of Italy
oh
for
yes, and
for
that's happened
90
to some of
days.
my colleagues because their nulla osta just hasn't come through.
I
Because they're saying now it's become even though initially it was listed as expect 3 months, in practice it's become like an average of 7 months now. So I know people that they've been here for 90 days and they're having to stay back in the UK for 90 days. And so then they have to hire, the school has had to hire like a temporary person for those periods. So I think Brexit has really ruined, or not ruined, but made the
I
recruitment.
I don't think you need to be cautious about this. Ruined is the word you should be
Yeah,
using.
but I
Yeah.
think that especially the recruitment for international, no, but I mean from a recruitment perspective of the international schools, it's really made things really difficult for them
Well,
to provide.
equally for television companies and for the arts in general, it's almost impossible to work outside Britain now, from in any long-term capacity. And it's the problem is Britain. The problem isn't Europe. Europe's
Yeah,
always
yeah,
dealt with these problems. The problem is Britain, and it's
yeah.
become a nightmare.
Yeah, so it's just so I think, and then after you get the work, so that wasn't too bad actually. Just it came in 2.5 weeks. I returned back to Italy. So
Mhm.
then I had my work visa, and then I then have to apply for the like residence visa. And so this you have to go to the police station to do your fingerprints, etc. And then and then it came through. Although even that sometimes to get that appointment takes a while to for it to come. But for me, it's like I had my appointment in I think early mid no January, yeah, towards the end mid
Mhm.
end of January. But some people end up waiting like they went to the first part of that in because I'm trying to there's like two parts of getting this residence visa. I forgot what I actually did at the first part, but the first part I think you have to go to the police station to get some things stamped, yeah. And then the second appointment is going to the like having your fingerprints done. But the initial bit where they stamp everything at the police station and they give you then you go to the post office to get your appointment. Um, some people I know they went in like October or November for that first appointment, and their second appointment for the fingerprints is in like July. So it's like that's how long people are. But luckily for me, it was I went in like November and my appointment
And
was in January.
and of course, without a residence permit, you can't really rent a flat. You probably can't get a bank account.
Yeah. Well, you know, you can't. So you can rent a flat because I had rented even without the work visa, but
Right.
it is true landlords are reluctant to um, rent to people with that. So I think if I didn't have my agency vouching for me, it would have been difficult as a loan renter, yes. But it's not impossible, but yes, you can't open a bank account and you can't be registered with their NHS because only today, because I've received my um, collected my residence permit at the police station yesterday. That's the only reason why today, this morning,
So
the agency has emailed me details
so
about
so
setting up a
actually,
bank.
for most of the year, you've had no health support because
Yeah, no, no,
private.
I've just been, I had private insurance in case, but like
Yeah, but
I've not
your
been.
private and your so you've had private insurance in Italy, or you've had private insurance in the UK.
But technically, I had some in it, like bought like travel insurance just for the UK, which I think only ran out like today or something,
Oh
or
right, oh
recently.
right. You're
So I had that covered anyway.
because you've been backwards and forwards.
Yeah,
That's yeah. But
and then
I had a travel insurance problem, and the British travel insurance people uh, were very bad about covering the health insurance bit.
mm,
Very bad, and it took
yeah,
nearly 6 months before
okay,
they
yeah,
paid up, which was embarrassing.
yeah, and then I mean like with my work, um there's like a similar to insurance where you can claim back costs, but I don't know. You need an Italian bank account for that. So I don't know for sure if I'm covered because on the page where you have to put in your details, it only accepts Italian bank accounts. So I have a
Yeah.
feeling I might not have even been covered. But yeah, so if really my focus was just not getting sick. But today I got emailed things about setting up a bank account and registering with the health service. Yeah, but until you get all these things, you can't do that. So, and the crazy thing is the permits they're generally only offering you up to a year. So my one actually runs out like mid-January next year. So we've gone through all this process since like which took about a year. And I'm basically with it in about 9 months' time, I need to go to start renew it because the whole renewal process takes about 3 months.
Oh my goodness! And are you left high and dry during that 3 months period, or the process can you
Oh,
can
what you
start
mean when I
before
renew it?
yes, you can start
Yeah,
before the renewal date is necessary.
yes, the idea is you renew it 3 months, you start the renewal process 3 months before it expires. because the problem is if you um, don't renew it, what will happen is you get stranded in Italy because right now, me being here isn't counting towards my allowance in the Schengen area because I've got the residence permit. If your permit expires, then the day after it expires, the days will start counting on your 90 days. And so then what will happen is if you um, reach your 90 days, you won't be able to leave the country. So you have to wait till you get your next permit, and only then would you be able to leave.
It is really a bit of a
Yeah.
nightmare.
Which is why, yeah. So the whole thing
And
is, so I,
do you have to renew this each year, or is it just renewed
yeah,
once?
it's each year because generally they're being a lot. In the past, they were more generous on the allowance of time, but because they're only offering people 1 year, essentially 1 year permits, yeah, it's going to be renewing each year. Yeah.
All right.
So I can't even say
Vithun,
it's funny because I've been here now six 6 months now, and I still feel like I'm like halfway through the whole.
but
There's still so many things I have to do to get settled.
is there not a way to make this permanent? The way to make it permanent is to buy a house, isn't it?
To get permanent residence, no, because to be permanent, I don't. I assume to be a permanent resident, that's more like a citizenship thing rather than
Oh, really?
this. You can get that's a separate thing to get be a resident of Milan, but that doesn't get you long-term residence either. It's still something you have to, yeah, renew. Yeah. The
Yeah.
other, so the only other thing I've done in my immigration process, which this is a complete bore, is that as part of it's called an integration agreement, or at least that's what I don't know what the Italian name was, but that's what they translated it to for me. Um, and essentially, you get given pretty short notice as well, because um, the first, there's two appointments. They're both essentially all you do is you sit in a room for 4 hours each time, watching a video in a classroom with all these other people that have immigrated about Italian culture and like life in Italy and stuff. And so the first time the agency booked it for me and they gave me about 1.5 weeks notice, which isn't too bad. Is if I wasn't that was enough time for me to get time off work and stuff. So I go then like one afternoon and it was I couldn't believe how disorganized it was because one actually made me realize the difference between the states. I feel the state sector and the difference between the state sector and the private sector in Italy is actually wider than at least just from that one observation, it's wider than it is in the UK from the state. I
Hmm.
actually don't think there's that much divide in the UK nowadays. Whereas there, I just felt in terms of the cleanliness, I couldn't believe it. I thought there was probably like in India there'd be cleaner facilities than in than what was there. I was really shocked, and then because I have heard actually in the Italian education system, they have a lot of unique things. Like a lot of their assessments are just verbal,
Yes.
so they just assess you by just talking to you about the subject, um, as opposed to many like paper exams. And then even within maths, in the state sector, if you have like dyscalculia, for example, you're allowed to use a calculator even in a non-calculator exam. And so
Yes.
that leads to a lot of difficulty if they choose to switch to an international system because they've always been used to having a calculator, and then suddenly in like the British education system that doesn't is not allowed, regardless of whatever additional needs that you may have. The British system doesn't give you that rule, like doesn't give you that
Yeah,
rule
yeah.
change. So it creates a difficult transition. But anyways, yeah, so it was just so poorly organized by the people that were there because they couldn't speak much English, which is fine. But what their plan of trying to get everyone to, and obviously bear in mind that Italy, not so much, I mean, not to the volume of the UK, but there is a lot of immigration in Italy as well.
Hmm.
So there was people from all different cultures. Many of them couldn't speak English either or Italian. And so we had the coordinator reading out everyone's names all of us just stand and him reading out all of our names in his Italian accent. But obviously, because most of our Italian isn't great or not even existent for some people, we're not going to understand him saying all these foreign names in his Italian accent. So it took forever to register us, like at least half an hour just to go through the
Yes.
names registering. And I suggested to one of the staff, I was like, oh, is it not easier if we just stand in a line and we just show him like the paper and you can tick us off? And she was like, no, it will take way longer doing that. It's much quicker doing it this way. And it just wasn't. And I was getting so frustrated. And the thing, like he was having to say names like 5 times because no one could understand like who was who because of his, obviously it would be difficult for him to pronounce names from other cultures for us to understand. So yeah, so that was the process. And you sit in a classroom with about 15 to 20 other people and you watch this video for 4 hours. Although they're not so
Yes.
strict on you watching the videos, like they let you kind of just get on with the work or um in
And the
in the
video is
background.
in the video is in Italian or
No, the
English.
video is in English.
Oh, right.
Yeah, the video is in English, but so they kind of but some of them couldn't speak English anyway, so I don't know, like, I mean, some of the immigrants that had come, so I don't know how
Yes.
much use it was for them. So yeah, so like, but yeah, the video. I mean, to be honest, the video actually would have been interesting had had I had more free time. I would have been interested in it. And the other thing that I found not interesting was the fact that the video was 15 years old. So because the topics were actually kind of interesting, like things about the demographic change of Italy over time and things that I actually would find interesting and probably would watch a video on YouTube about. The problem was the fact that because the video was 15 years old, all the data was so outdated, so it
Was
wasn't
that, yeah,
relevant.
I completely, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so that was the issue. So then, yeah, and so when we came on, it was a Wednesday that we came on for the first appointment. As they were registering us, they were like, "Oh yeah, by the way, the next appointment's on Friday." Um, they were like, "Oh, they forgot to tell you about when the second," because we knew there was a second appointment, but they didn't tell us when. And they were like, "Oh yeah, they forgot to send it out with the messaging. Your second appointment's Friday." And so we had to come to the same place on. It was such short notice, and actually, one of the people that was there, they had to change their holiday because they'd booked a flight for Friday and they had to
Hmm.
change their flight because, and the reason why it's so strict is because it's not one of these things that you can reschedule because if you don't turn up to the date and time they've said, you get negative credits on against your name and that affects your ability to for your residence.
Oh, right. But
Yeah.
so your school had to give you 2 days, two
Two,
days off
yeah,
effectively.
2 afternoons. Fortunately, the both of them were in the afternoon, so in total I really only missed like 1 hour of lessons.
Hmm.
So it wasn't catastrophic for them. Actually, one of the things I particularly like about my school is that I don't think this is normal for schools generally, but my school, at least, it's we start at 8, so we register them at 8, and then we finish at 10 to 2.
Oh, that's wonderful.
But we
Yes.
have to stay till 4:30, but the lessons finish at 10 to 2. So at 10 to 2 is when you go and have lunch and then you come back and do all the other meetings, planning and all that stuff.
Hmm.
Which I find so yes, I had to get time off, but I wasn't missing lessons. I was just missing
Yes, yes.
planning time. So it wasn't as catastrophic in that regard. But the whole process I just thought was a waste of time because if they had quizzed us on that video, I don't think many people would have got gained anything. And they knew it
Yeah.
was a farce as well because they would go through that. There was about 5 or 6 episodes, and they would go through each episode and be like, "Oh, I'm sorry." Like they'd apologize before playing the next the next video. Yeah. So the whole thing was just a bit of a sham. And then
Was
afterwards, they
it on a
gave
big was it on a big screen or a little television box or
um maybe like yeah, I guess the size of a classroom projector, I guess.
right, right,
Yeah.
right.
So, or maybe even small. Yeah, maybe like I would say probably a big TV screen size. It was sort of size. Yeah.
That
It
sounds
felt very
about
much
right.
like sitting in like a class of children watching a video. It was that sort of vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But and then afterwards, they just gave us like a 6-page document about summarizing these like 8 hours of videos that we watched. Um, but yeah, that's the other thing, and because that was a compulsory part of the immigration process because you get positive credits, I think, for turning up, But if you didn't turn up, you would get negative credits, which would affect your state. Because I think I think it's similar. Like if you commit crimes and all etc., you would get negative credits. So like, but
Oh, really?
not turning yeah, but not turning up is a
It's
just
like
the
a
equation is
crime.
like yeah, is a negative. Yeah, it gets you like lots of negative credits. So it's not
Right.
really an optional thing because it would probably result in them revoking your residence. Yeah.
It's
So
horrible.
that's
It's horrible.
yeah. So that's the main stuff with the immigration that I can think of. But yeah, it has been a really long process, and it feels like I think once they get everything set, like the health, like the NHS and the bank account and everything, then I think the final step is like getting an identity card. Then I think I'll feel like I fully settled. But until then, it's like I still feel like I'm on the immigration process.
Look, Vithun, I think we probably need to pause there and come back because I want to talk to you about the cost of living in Italy.
Yeah.
Also the experience of teaching it. I think there's so many things we need to talk about, and there's so many people who who probably would want to follow in your footsteps. And what you're providing is breathtakingly brilliant information in detail. So can we come back?
Yeah, yeah, I
And
think that's a good idea. Yeah.
can we do a part two?
Yeah.
Excellent. So
Yeah, I think
so
that
look,
sounds good. Yeah.
Vithan, thank you very much, and the rest of so people who are looking at this, can you come back and follow for part two, which will come out in shortly. It will come out shortly. So bye.
Yeah. Bye for
Thank you.
now.
Right.